This video is a code review of the VBA code dealing with the stock liquidation spreadsheet. To get started here, I'm going to hide worksheets that don't have any VBA code associated with them. This GraphPrices worksheet does have VBA code associated with it, but the code is somewhat discussed already in a link here that if you on the how-to of the GraphPrices worksheet. If you go to around the 12 up to about the 15-minute mark, there's a discussion about the history behind the VBA code. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the GraphPrices worksheet. So it leaves these three worksheets and this workbook and module 5. So let's talk about what's in this workbook. It's when the workbook is first opened, and then down here you see a little bit of code that's run when the workbook is closed. So back up here to when it's opened, similar to other Polaris provided spreadsheets, it records the date and time the spreadsheet's being open, the name of the spreadsheet, the Excel version, checks for internet connections, goes out and grabs the last trade date and the previous trade date, records those, checks to make sure it can get to Polaris SQL Server database, and then makes a call to log the use of the spreadsheet. So the computer name, username, along with some other information is recorded, and then a check is made to user is using the latest version of the spreadsheet. And when the spreadsheet is closed, it just does a little bit of house cleaning on the GraphPrices worksheet, and then it just resets this value here. All right, next let's talk about the VBA code here in Module 5. We've already seen some of these functions call, namely the spreadsheet open to log information. You can just see here it's making a call to the Polaris database, log the user information that's using the spreadsheet. Here's how the latest version information is retrieved from the Polaris database. And then this function down here just simply makes a call to see if the database is accessible. All right, and one other function in Module 5 that or subroutine we haven't talked about that we'll be talking to you about shortly is this query TickerData. But when it's called, it goes out to the Polaris database and pulls ticker information about each ticker that's listed in the Liquidate worksheet. Okay, next we're going to talk about the TickerData VBA code. You can see here when A2 is selected either by the user or through other VBA code, this code looks for A2 being selected, and then clears out the worksheet from columns A through BZ. Then it goes and builds a ticker string based on what it finds in the Liquidate column C, and then based on that ticker data, it then calls the TickerData subroutine that we've already quickly looked at. In that TickerData subroutine, it also writes the result set in the TickerData worksheet. So when you finish up here, you just move the cursor back to A1 and then check in to see if this was invoked through the Liquidate VBA code or directly by the end user by selecting A2. And if it was invoked directly by the end user, go ahead and start up calculation and screen updating again. Okay, next we'll go through the prices VBA code, and it's similar to the TickerData in the way it's laid out. Namely, if the user selects A2 or VBA code, makes a selection of A2, this code is run here. The landing area for the results set is cleared out. It constructs a string similar to what was done in the TickerData. It's written here in cell B1, and then pricing data is retrieved by calling this multiple split subroutine with the ticker list, and then from there it rewrites, because everything is cleared out on this worksheet, it rewrites the header information, namely here, here, and here in row 3. and then it loops through populating the rows based on the results set that was recorded in cell B2, returns the cursor back to A1, and then makes a check to see how this subroutine was called. It was called through VBA code from the Liquidate worksheet. It will then not go back into calculating and screen updating, but it was called by the user, then it will turn calculation back on and update the screen. All right, the last worksheet with VBA code in it that we haven't discussed is the Liquidate worksheet. It looks for one of three events. Either G2 has been selected, P1 has been selected, or a cell in column E has been selected. So first off, if G2 is selected, then it marks that it's about ready to call subroutines from the Liquidate worksheet. Therefore, those subroutines being called should not turn calculation back on or screen updating on, because the Liquidate subroutine here will do it. Then it goes to the TickerData worksheet and does a selection to cause that VBA code to execute and retrieve TickerData and put the results on the TickerData worksheet. And it goes to the Prices worksheet, executes its VBA code by selecting A2 on that worksheet. It puts its results set on the Prices worksheet, and then after both the TickerData and the prices have been retrieved, and we mark that no longer in the Liquidate VBA code. And finally here, put the cursor back on cell B1 and turn calculation on and screen updating back on. Now if the user selects cell P1, this code is executed here. The cell L1 is set to its default in case the user didn't overwrite that. Clears out cells J1 and F1 and F2, and then column C where there's tickers, and then column H and Z and A, and then it copies formulas from the last occupied row back to rows above that in case any of those cells were overwritten by the user. Next, it initiates retrieving of price and ticker data, but because we've cleared out column C, which is the ticker list, when it executes this code up here, the VBA code that gets executed for prices and ticker data worksheets will result in only clearing out the cells and retrieving just the comparative information, namely the index and the comparative ticker. Next, E1 is selected and turns calculation back on and updates the screen. The remaining event in this Liquidate VBA code is if the user were to select in this range here in column E where there's a corresponding ticker, it will then write the location row and column of that selected cell. If the user has selected a cell in column E corresponding to a ticker in column C, the entire row that the cell resides in will be highlighted in light yellow. If the row is currently highlighted and the cell in column E is reselected, the entire row will be unhighlighted. The last remaining topic is on database objects used by the spreadsheet. There's 4 objects that are used: 2 tables and 1 view and 1 stored procedure. The 2 tables are the liquidation spreadsheet version table and then the log of uses of the spreadsheet, or when the spreadsheet gets opened. The view is for spreadsheet version, so as multiple rows are stored in the table, this view will only bring back the most recent row that was stored in the table. And then the stored procedure is used to write to the table called spreadsheet open log. So when a spreadsheet is open, this stored procedure is called, and resulting in user information being written to the liquidation spreadsheet open log table. Okay, that's a wrap on the VBA code review of the stock liquidation spreadsheet.